off an LLM different than turning off a person? There's a good argument that consciousness is the source of value in the universe, and especially valence-bearing experience. You can discuss whether non-valently loaded experience has the same moral value, but in some sense, this is like the source of value in the universe, and so it's imperative to really understand it. And then from an engineering and practical perspective, if we could develop a physical theory that allowed us to build the technologies for this idea called substrate independence, if you tried to understand what was going on in the brain and recreate that in a machine, that would be a totally transformative for the human condition. You'd have entities that didn't age, that didn't get sick, that could be transferred at almost the speed of light. This, and so the question is like, is this practical? Some assumptions. And so in one form of this talk, the first slide was like titled an apology, because I think one of the issues with consciousness, I mean, there's few fields like this that really reinforce to you that there's no such thing as new ideas. Like many, they've all been had before. But this is really my worldview of how the things that I see out there, how they fit together. And so there's some background that's needed to contextualize that. The first is that I think we're looking for something that is fundamental, or at least as fundamental as mass and charge. We're looking for a primary property of the universe that you've got very deep physical explanations for. And we're looking for things that have very fundamental feeling objects. The second is that I think it's related to computation, transformation of information. I think that the bit is a unit that shows up a lot in my thinking about consciousness. People can debate, take exception to this idea of like, is the universe a computer? I'd say like, we might call it something different, but it's this idea that there's these states that interact that can solve problems when you configure your matter system carefully, you get the sense that it's doing these computations. It, at least for us, is emergent from the brain, which critically is composed only of ordinary matter arranged according to the rules of chemistry. So this goes back to like my operational definition of grounding here. So you can look at like, is consciousness impossible? Is there some fundamental barrier to understanding it? Like, to think that there's something that couldn't be understood, even though we can affect it pharmacologically, you'd have to say that there's something that is special about the particular proteins and the lipid bilayers and the way that the biology works that I think is probably not that fundamental. I don't think it's that integrated necessarily in the IIT sense. Like, I can easily decouple my hearing from my vision by putting on headphones. I never confuse things that I see with things that I hear. You can always form a product space of multiple aspects of this, but I don't think that it's integrated in more than like a trivial sense. And critically, it's orthogonal to intelligence. I think it is possible to have a pure experience in the absence of intelligence, and it is orthogonal to agency. So I think sometimes when people talk about, especially in the context of machine intelligence, they talk about sentience. I think that's wrapped up in elements of like, can it impact the world? And that isn't, I think we're really going for like pure quails here. That is the thing that we